Okay, so as far as I'm aware, we are now live. Um, does somebody just want to post the links to this Hangout at the top in the Facebook page already? That'd be great.
Okay, hi, if anyone is watching now. We're just waiting on a few staff members who are having connection issues. We'll get started shortly. If you want to start asking questions in the Q&A bar in advance of us actually starting the session, you're welcome to.
Have we introduced everybody who's here? Or just by Hangouts?
Not yet, Amy.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started now. Welcome to the first open office hours of the QuidditchUK Executive Management team. The members of the team that are here tonight are Amy Maidment, President, Matthew Gunsel, Vice President, Zoe Ford, Technology Director, myself, James Burnett, Gameplay Director, and it was intended that we were going to have Melanie Piper, Teams Director, with us in the call. Mel's unfortunately having technology problems, which means she can't actually be speaking to you directly, but she is able to take questions and will be able to respond via us by text. And as you can see, Amy is also having technology problems, so but she will be here still to field questions. So if you have questions of a presidential nature, do continue to ask them whether or not she is currently in the call. The Hangout's going to last, the Hangout schedule to last an hour and a half to 2 hours, so we're going to hopefully try and wrap it up by about 9:30 and try and definitely make sure it's cut off by 10 o'clock. We'll try and answer as many questions as we can, but obviously we might not be able to cover all of them. But just ask them as they come to you in the bar on the right, and we'll choose them from there. I guess we might as well get started. So the first question is from Philip Sam. When did the idea of a total relaunch come about? And I think the best person to answer that is probably Matt. So go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Philip. So the idea of a total relaunch has been around for a little while. We went through a time a few months ago where we brought in a whole bunch of new staff, um, and we brought in the first draft of our current constitution. And around that time, we realized there was a lot of new things we wanted to bring in for this season, um, and that to do so would require quite a lot of big projects to be worked on at the same time. And we decided rather than doing these projects independently from each other, to do them all kind of with a similar deadline date and kind of brand it as a relaunch, um, which it was. So things like redesigning our logo, creating a new website, membership plan, challenge shield, all of that kind of stuff. Um, they were originally created as independent projects, which were then tied together under this relaunch title. So it was around for a while, and we've been working on it for the past kind of 3 or 4 months solidly as the relaunch. So yeah, that's that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Matt. 2 seconds. We're hearing that there are some issues with people seeing us, so just give us a moment to look into that, and we'll get back to questions soon.
So it would look like some people at least are figuring it out, seeing as our viewers just went up from 2 to 6. Um, we're trying to figure out how to help you guys, so we're not just staying quiet, we're trying to figure out a solution, so just bear with us. Thank you.
With,
I am fixing it currently.
when it works, it's absolutely brilliant, but it's very tricky to get it to work right, which is quite frustrating. So just bear with us.
Right, that should all be working now, so hopefully we can get back on with questions. If you want to ask questions, it would be helpful if you still had them in the Google+, but then you can also see our answers on the YouTube link.
If you're on the YouTube site, you should also have a small pop-up box in the bottom left that says "Be part of the conversation," and clicking on that will take you to a Google Hangouts interface, which will allow you to both answer questions and see our video. Okay, so hopefully those of you who were struggling before are now with us and can hear us on one site or another. If you can use either the be part of the conversation link that should be on the YouTube page, or the original link given in the first set of tweets and so on, to ask questions, and the second link will definitely allow you to see the video as far as we can tell. So I'll go through the introductions again. There were initially meant to be 5 of us from the QuidditchUK Executive Management team as part of this Q&A session. The 4 of us here are Amy Maidman, President, Matthew Gunsel, Vice President, Zoe Ford, Technology Director, and me, James Burnett, Gameplay Director. We were also supposed to have Mel Piper, Teams Director. She unfortunately can't get her video working to be part of the Hangout itself, but she is following from your end, so to speak. So you can ask questions intended for her, and we will relay a text answer to you. And the same goes for if any of us have to drop out of the call for technological reasons, you can still direct questions to us, and we will try to get them answered via a text medium if the EMT member can't stay in the call. The Hangout is hopefully going to come to a conclusion about 9:30 if the questions go on that long, and we'll definitely try to get it done by 10 o'clock. We have a few questions asked in advance from Facebook, and you can ask questions in the bar on the right-hand side of the Google Hangout interface. We'll try to answer as many as we can, although if they come very quickly, we may struggle to answer all of them. But Matt already has already been made aware of the first question, which comes from Philip Sam. When did the idea of a total relaunch come about? So, Matt, do you want to answer that question now?
Sure. Can everyone hear me okay? Is this good? Cool. I'm going to assume so. So the idea of a total relaunch has been around for a little while. We originally had several big projects that different departments were working on that we wanted to be in effect for the 2014-2015 season. And it just kind of made sense to tie them all together into one big relaunch. Specifically, a lot of the visual stuff, such as bringing in a new logo, it made sense to do that alongside the new website. And then a lot of the stuff, such as membership and Challenge Shield, was also tied together. So yeah, the idea came about pretty quickly once we kind of pulled the projects and saw what we had to do and how they tied together and stuff. It's been around for probably about 4 months as a working project in various forms, with the different departments working on their different responsibilities. So yeah, thanks a lot for your question, Philip. Please send more. We love your questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Matt. Go to a question from from Facebook now, I guess. The question comes from Rob Barringer. Will QuidditchUK be working towards Sports England and Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and so on registration? And if so, what does QuidditchUK need to achieve in order to meet these criteria, and how will QuidditchUK go about it? And this question covers a lot of things, so I guess it's best answered by Amy.
Okay, can everybody hear me? I hope people can hear me. Am I being too quiet? Okay.
Speak up a little, Amy.
Okay, I'm sorry. My tablet has a silly microphone. We are definitely hoping for Sports England and other Scotland, Wales affiliation, because one of our primary goals as an organisation is to have Quidditch recognised as a sport by people who recognise sports, and it will bring a lot more credibility to it. However, we have a lot standing in our way. They need various proof of financial transactions for 2 years, which we don't currently have, and there's a lot that we're working towards, like AGM minutes, and eventually we hope we will get there, but we won't be able to apply, for example, tomorrow and get it because we don't have all the things we need. But it's one of my goals by the time I give up as president that we will have that. Were there any other facets to that question that I missed?
No, I think that covers everything, Amy. Thanks. Still not got any more questions on the live Hangout, so make sure you keep them coming either through the interface on the right-hand side of the original link or through the be part of the conversation link that should pop up on the YouTube link that we sent you. We'll take another question from the website now then while we wait for those questions. This one comes from Will Johnson. And the question is, will QuidditchUK try to develop regional teams similar to county teams in other sports? Because he thinks it would be pretty cool. And this question is definitely one for Mel. So if you just bear with us for a couple of seconds, Mel will be able to come up with a response to that, and we'll be able to relay it via me. Sorry about the delay, everyone. Mel's received the question and is preparing a response right now. We'll get that to you as soon as we can.
In the meantime, think of questions to ask and put them in the ask box thing.
Okay, sorry for the delay with that. We now have an answer for you from the team's director, which is that currently Quidditch UK, as we all know, is something growing at an increasingly rapid rate. Getting more and more teams is something which is currently of critical importance to us. It's currently a priority, but if in a couple of years regional teams came to be possible due to the number of players, it's something which we'll be able to discuss further with a more definitive answer. So it seems like at the moment it's not a priority to develop regional teams, but that is something that will be considered when the density of players in different parts of the UK is sufficient to make it realistic. And Mel also wants me to add that since most teams are currently based in universities, there's quite close ties to those universities. Whereas it's looking likely that in the near future, more and more teams not based in universities will be rising across the UK. And in the future, that means that county teams are likely to be more possible than they are currently. Okay, so moving to the Q&A section again. By far the most popular question at the moment comes from OUQC, and it's European Championships news, and this is tied in closely with the current state of the IQA. So the best person to answer that will be Amy. So Amy, I'm not sure, you dropped out of the call for a second, I'm not sure if you got that question, but
that's cool. My internet dropped at that point. Could you repeat it?
The current question is from OUQC, and it's just simply European Championships news.
European Championships news. There's not much development at the moment. There is a European Council that will be meeting in the next week to further this. I believe the meeting is on the 8th. There is an announcement that has been drafted and is currently in the hands of the IQA. Matt, have you got anything to add? I know you're a little bit more involved in this than I am.
Yeah. Essentially, this European group that has been meeting which has a whole bunch of representatives from different European organizations and teams and so on, has agreed some base level information about EQC or whatever it ends up being called. And that information should be going out shortly. However, there are, issues in the line of communication where basically the information which we wanted sent out hasn't been sent out yet. But we're really going to try to push that out as soon as possible, probably by at least Monday. So you guys can get all that information. I realize it's a big event that a lot of teams will want to start fundraising for and start kind of gathering funds for really soon. So we're going to try to get that information out to you like really quickly. Thanks a lot, OUQC.
I really apologise again for the delays in this announcement. The information has been there for quite some time, but it's out of our control. And again, I'm very, very sorry that it's taken so long.
Okay, thanks, Amy and Matt. Taking another question now from the Hangouts. This one from NYI Head, which is, if Scotland voted for independence from the UK in the referendum, how would that affect the Scottish QuidditchUK teams? And I'm going to refer this one, this doesn't really fall into any of our portfolios specifically, but I'm going to refer this one to Matt.
Great. So if Scotland do vote for independence, we will obviously have to take that kind of as it comes. I think without having confirmed with anyone or anything like this, our policy would be to work very closely with the Scottish teams to develop other teams in Scotland to the point where they could kind of have a sustainable Scottish league. But again, that is dependent on a number of factors, on how the referendum plays out and so on. We're currently looking at working very closely with Ireland and Irish Quidditch in terms of helping them develop. So I could see that relationship being very similar if independence is the decided outcome of the referendum. Thank you.
Okay, hope that answers your question. Taking another one from the Hangout now. This one comes from Jan Mikowaszak. Will games and tournaments from before the relaunch be present in the team's histories on the site at all? It will be a shame not to showcase that part of UK Quidditch history. And this is a website question, so I'm going to refer that one to Zoe.
Hi, it is something we discussed quite heavily before the relaunch, but obviously it's a lot of input, and it would involve getting every game that has ever been played in the past however many 2 or 3 years of Quidditch in the UK, and as the information we're going to be collecting in the future is going to be very detailed and very precise and very lots of validation, we want to make sure that all of the information on the website is of this high quality, and we don't feel that with the information that was recorded of these games that we can provide this for the previous seasons. So I apologise that it isn't there, but feel free to publicise past games on your own media.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. I'm going to take one more from the Hangouts before I go back to take one from the website. And this one comes from Calvin NG, who I believe is, he's based in Canada. And the question is, as a fellow international and non-US Quid Kid, I'm not sure if that's meant to be non-UK Quid Kid, but it applies in any case. I'm curious if the UK has chosen its IQA Congress representatives yet. And that is a question for Matt and or Amy.
Great. Hi, Calvin. We have chosen our representatives to the Congress. For this season, they're going to be Amy and myself, starting off anyway. The idea is that next season, I will no longer be a representative. and that will instead be a elected position from among captains. We haven't yet sorted out the details of that. That's something that's kind of coming down the line. But for this upcoming season, it will be myself and Amy acting in that capacity. Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Matt. So moving back to the website now, this is a question from Simon Bidwell. And the question is, why is there currently no provision for elected positions in the Quidditch UK Constitution, with specific reference to positions on the executive management team? And he adds that open elections could help to prevent a situation such as the USQ, where the incumbent board don't seem to represent the views of the player base. Adding that since there's no fixed term time, players can't do anything to get a management team that represents them. And that, I think, is a question for Amy.
Okay, the main reason why we currently do not have an elected position is because it's very much worked as a company or an organisation where these are jobs that people need to have the correct skills for, they need to apply for, and we will, we will choose the best candidate depending on if they're the most suited to get the job done, to fit with our mindset, and to further Quidditch in this particular way. It involves a lot more work than I think people tend to know it does. However, we are very, very aware that there have been communication problems in USQ, and we have watched how they've got into that situation, and we're taking lots and lots of measures, doing fantastic, and we do respond when people ask us questions, and we're doing everything we can to, like I say, ensure we don't get into that hole of being too far removed as an exec from the people we're working for, that it seems like we're not taking their opinions into account. So yes, I hope that answers the question. I feel like I was a little bit rambly.
Okay, thanks, Amy. I would just append to that, of course, that there is a complaints form for members on the Quidditch UK website, which can be used if people feel that there has been any misconduct or inappropriate action made by any Quidditch UK staff member in representing them or their team. So taking another one from the Hangout now, this is another one from Philip Sam. Will Quidditch UK be offering a way freshers can become Quidditch UK members without having to pay online? He's concerned they'd be unwilling to pay for something on a site that is completely new and unfamiliar to them. And this one applies most, I think, to me. And in short, Philip, that is part of the utility that we've worked into the Challenge Shield. Obviously, there is a Challenge Shield hangout later this week, and so I don't want to go into too much detail about specifics of the Challenge Shield, but the Challenge Shield is one of the Quidditch UK competitions, allows players to play in up to 2 Challenge Shield matches without having previously made any affiliation or paid to become a member, which means that if you have people that aren't sure about Quidditch and aren't sure about Quidditch UK, our ideal is that you'd play a couple of Challenge Shield matches with them, and they would have absolutely no commitment or contribution that they have to make at all. And that will hopefully get them hooked, and will encourage them to buy membership in order to become permanent Challenge Shield members and also members of the tournament team. So we recognise the concern, and we hope that that aspect of the Challenge Shield will address it. And hopefully that is something that all your clubs can use to sort of ease uncertain people gradually into the teams and into the sport. Okay, so next question on the Hangouts comes from Hellfire Mage, and the question is that there's been a fair bit of negative feedback about Rulebook 8 in general from players. Are Quidditch UK looking to write their own rulebook or a joint rulebook with Europe or the IQA for Rulebook 9 to address the issues raised? And I think this question also applies mostly to me, although I will refer it to Matt at the end to see if he has anything to add from with relation to the IQA. from my point of view, we haven't currently planned exactly what we want to do in terms of engaging with the rules yet for Rulebook 9. We're certainly not looking to write our own rulebook to replace Rulebook 8 imminently. But we do recognize that a USQ written rulebook, a rulebook written for USQ, is not entirely appropriate to be an international standard rulebook as a permanent precedent. So we'd hope to have some sort of input in producing the international standard rulebook for what will be in effect Rulebook 9, but we're not yet decided on exactly whether we want to write our own draft and propose it or be part of a team, and hopefully the IQA will have their own sort of plan for that in time for the build up to Rulebook 9 that we will be able to be part of. But I'm going to refer that over to Matt to see if he has anything to add.
Yeah, James, you covered a lot of my kind of contribution. We're very keen to stick to the international standard and not encourage regional variations. That's something we really want to stick away from as an international policy. So in line with that, we want to go with whatever is the commonly accepted international standard. Obviously, the IQA are having some issues at the moment with their transition. In some areas, it's being slower than others. But hopefully, once the IQA is truly underway, we will see progress on an official international rulebook, and we will definitely be looking to follow that in terms of our own rule set.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to take another one from the website now. And this is another one from Rob Barringer. The question is, what will QuidditchUK be using the money for in the upcoming season? In other words, what will QuidditchUK be prioritising in terms of putting its resources in? And that's quite a general question, so I think that's another one best answered by Amy.
Okay, what are we going to be using your money for? We're going to be using it to make ever before. We're going to be using it to help some form of merchandise store to be able to give a financial boost to that, and eventually we're going to be using what's left over from this annual.
Sorry guys, we're aware there's some issue with hearing Amy.
Oh, am I being too quiet?
It's more that you're cutting out a lot.
Oh,
do you want to try repeating the answer to that question? And if not, we'll try and get a text-based one, or
yeah.
Matt can try and answer it.
Yeah, we're going to be using it for making BQC bigger and better than before. We're going to be using it for hopefully to be able to start a merchandise store so we can have a bit of financial boost in order to get some QuidditchUK merchandise. We're going to be using it for anything left over from this annual year for trying to get insurance as part of the QuidditchUK membership, because I would absolutely love if we could have insurance for anything that goes wrong on the pitch. And there was something else, but Matt, can you remember if there's anything else I have forgotten? I'm running on very little sleep at the moment, I apologise.
It's fine. There is obviously like maintenance costs. So for example, a lot of the technology department's work has kind of small costs associated with it. So, you know, keeping the server going and that kind of stuff. These are kind of small costs, but they end up adding up before you realize. And yeah, like Amy said, a lot of our priority this year is making BQC kind of bigger and better. And last year it was great, and you know it was great for what it was. But this year I really want to kind of blow everyone out of the water and really make it a great event. So that's our focus.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. So the next question from the Hangouts is another one from OUQC. Are there any plans for the Northern and Southern Cups to be QuidditchUK official or QuidditchUK organised every year? maybe with a smaller scale bidding process similar to the one used for the BQC. This is something I think that is in gameplay again, so I'll answer this. There's no immediate plans for QuidditchUK to take over management of Northern or Southern on the same level as the BQC. Obviously, last season, both Northern and Southern were competitions that were created by individual clubs, specifically Kiel and Southampton. As a QuidditchUK representative, I'm not actually sure whether they intended these to be something that their clubs hosted every year or that moved around their area. So that's something that obviously we'd have to discuss with them, because we don't want to be infringing on what individual clubs want if they envisaged it as something that they hosted every year, similar to Reading's White Knights tournament. That said, I think QuidditchUK, the gameplay department, are definitely going to be looking into helping out with tournament management, in terms of advice and promotion going forward. And I think I like the idea of both Northern and Southern Cup being something that is not at this stage managed by QUK on the same level as the BQC, but is definitely sort of overseen to make sure that it is a representative regional competition, and is something that is a repeating tournament for people to feel like that it is worthy of competing for. And of course, we do have on the website at the moment the capacity for all teams, or all members in fact, to register events, which covers the establishment of tournaments and other gameplay events and non-gameplay events for QuidditchUK to advise with and promote on our calendar and on our websites and through our social media channels. So this season, it's likely we would hold an informal discussion with the team or teams that were interested in holding Northern and Southern Cup, and then encourage them to use that channel to proceed with establishing the competitions under QuidditchUK assistance, I guess, as any other tournament, as we'd recommend with any other tournament. In future seasons, we may try to make it a little bit more formal, but that's essentially where it is at the moment. Okay, so see if I can take another one from the website now. This one is from Timothy Lee, and the question is, given the financial changes this year, what are the plans for the legal structure? That is a question best directed, I think, at Matt.
Sure. So obviously this year has brought a lot of changes as to how we work and kind of how we're perceived and so on. In terms of legal structure, we're definitely looking at how we can become more legitimate through that. A lot of the processes for registering companies, charitable companies, charities, non-profits, etc. in the UK require a considerable backlog of financial information, which we just don't have. So that's something we're definitely looking at, and we're probably going to have put in place formally for next season or the season after, but it's definitely not one of our immediate goals. We would rather be getting bigger and better events out than rushing around trying to meet legal requirements for various organizations and so on.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Okay, so the next question from the Hangouts. Is there a plan for an official QuidditchUK rankings table similar to the USQ ELO version? This is another question, I think, that falls under my department. The short answer, sorry, this question is from Bill Orridge. The short answer, Bill, is no. Obviously, most people in the QuidditchUK community will know that Peggy Cook has maintained an informal table-based, I'm not sure if it's the exact USQ algorithm or an adapted version, but based on that, for the last season, starting with the BQC, I feel, and I think QuidditchUK generally feels, that that is not an ideally representative system, and it has a lot of shortcomings, and really and the way it represents the standard between teams is not ideal. And in terms, when looking at how we wanted an official QuidditchUK league to work, we wanted it to be something that reflected games for the league itself, rather than just sort of a league which, or just sort of a table which wasn't its own competition and reflected a lot of different stages of other competitions which aren't entirely reflective of obviously the different way teams play and the different priorities teams have in friendlies and in mini tournaments, like, for example, the Almighty Battle or the 4Ls tournament, and all the way up to competitions like the BQC. So the Challenge Shield is obviously what we've opted to go for as sort of the official QuidditchUK League, at least for the time being. And we're not planning on officially endorsing any rankings table on a similar way to the USQ's structure at the moment. Although obviously there is value in one or many unofficial tables comparing all teams' gameplay using algorithms such as the USQs. So by no means do we criticize or dislike Peggy's table. It's just not something that we're interested in endorsing officially, because we don't think it's the best way of gauging and comparing teams' competitive records. Okay, so I'm going to take another question from the website now, and this one comes again from Simon Bidwell. And the question is, how will the newly relaunched QuidditchUK be handling Team UK? Will it be an ongoing thing, or will it only reappear for the next international event? He thinks a consistent Team UK with call-ups and training would be great for the community, but it's a luxury and might not be a priority. And this is a question best answered by our teams director, and Mel has prepared an answer. And Mel says that Team UK has been an incredibly important part of this year and one of the highlights of the season. And we recognise this as QuidditchUK, and we know we can't just let this brilliance disappear until the next event. So QuidditchUK are planning on adding a new role to the teams department, the Team UK training coordinator, Team UK coaching coordinator, I believe it will be, whose main focus will be to maintain this team throughout the year, including managing the squad and training, and basically ensuring that Team UK remains a team rather than just appearing for the next international competition. And more details will be available on this in the next couple of weeks when the coordinator position is opened. And this will be a position that will be able to be applied for in the same vein as all other QuidditchUK positions to date. And the future of QuidditchUK will be determined between the teams and gameplay departments with this training coordinator or coaching coordinator once they've been appointed. And obviously this new position will be someone who can concentrate solely on the management of Team UK, which means it's not something that will be distracting or diverting the EMT. So it will be expanding QuidditchUK to incorporate Team UK as another aspect rather than diverting or altering our priorities to put Team UK above other aspects of our development. Next question from the Hangouts comes from Lorga. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And the question is, how strong it's a two-part question. How strong will the connection with other national leagues in Europe and the world be, and how strong do you want those connections to be? I think this is another two-part question, so I'm going to say something on this, and then I'm going to defer over to Matt. In short, in terms of gameplay, I think there's a general feeling that we want more connection and more competition with other national leagues and other national teams than just something like global games. obviously, as the previous question, an earlier question has indicated, there's a lot of excitement in the UK at the moment about the European Championships. So, and QuidditchUK is 100% behind as many UK teams getting involved in as many capacities as possible with that competition. And obviously, the title is in the UK at the moment, and QuidditchUK is very eager to see that stay that way. We also feel, obviously, I hope this is indicated by our taking on a Team UK position, a Team UK coaching coordinator within QuidditchUK, that we don't want to limit Team UK to just playing internationally every 2 years. So QuidditchUK is eager to have competitive connections with Europe in particular on a gameplay level. But in terms of organisational communication and development, that part of that question is probably better answered by Matt, so I'm going to defer that over now.
Sure, thanks, James. Yeah, I love all the other national leagues. If you follow my Twitter, which is @QuickGunsel, you'll see that I talk to people from other national leagues all the time. Just the other day, I Skyped Tegan from Canada, and I'm in communication all the time with other people. Yes, that was a shameless plug for my Twitter. I'm not even ashamed. But yeah, so we keep up contact all the time. Especially, I think, with a lot of other leagues, there's a lot of space to learn things, to see how things are going in their nation, and whether or not we can adopt that in the UK. So yeah, I'm really enthusiastic to keep up connections between different countries, and just having that as kind of like a regular thing where we can work with each other in just an easy professional way. So yeah, I would love for that connection to be really strong at every level, like James said, at the teams and gameplay level, and also at the top management level.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. So the next question comes from Harry Smith, and his question is: do you think the inclusion of a leaderboard and recorded game history limits teams in their capacity to play friendlies and swap team games, by which I would assume mean games with no real limitation on which team players can play for, and just sort of playing games between teams for fun and sort of to mess around rather than for competitive reasons? I think this question is another gameplay one, and my feeling on it is really that the system as it's designed is very much not going to limit or inhibit that sort of thing, because there's no, certainly it doesn't restrict it in terms of what's actually possible. Obviously there's no criticism or there's no prevention of anyone playing games off the record. Those of you who have read the roster limitation policy, which is sort of the Merck rules, if you will know that while all QuidditchUK endorsed or sanctioned or organised events will have to use a roster limitation level, unless they're fantasy tournaments or such, the casual roster limitation level, which is the lowest, the most laid back, doesn't restrict which club's team or which team's players can play for at all. It requires that everyone involved be members, but it doesn't have any limitation on how many players from outside your normal players you can have. So I feel like that won't limit that kind of gameplay. And in terms of friendlies, the Challenge Shield in its design is to some extent intended to replace friendlies insofar as it will give a purpose to a lot of the best of 3 matches that previously would happen just for the love of Quidditch. Now they will be for the love of Quidditch and for glory and honour. But there's no reason that if one of the teams is not part of the Challenge Shield, or if it just doesn't make sense due to teams' relative Challenge Shield position to play one another, there's absolutely nothing which inhibits the playing of friendlies. And if teams are worried about competitive records, there's always possibility to play an unofficial friendly, or there's no The results of an official friendly will be recorded on the QuidditchUK website, but they won't affect a team's standing for competitions or for the Challenge Shield. So there's no real detriment to playing friendlies that you don't take too seriously. So basically no, and it's quite a priority that friendlies and all standards and all levels of competitive gameplay are, or non-competitive gameplay, as it were, are prioritised. So the way we design and further our competitions is such as to prevent that becoming a problem.
Just to add, it would seem that Amy is having immense tech difficulties. So from here on in, I think I'll be taking all the questions that Amy would have taken. She sends her immense apologies for everyone who wanted to look at her face. And says that they would love to speak to you soon.
Yep, thanks, Matt. So we now have a question from NYI Head asking, what kind of events would be appropriate to submit for QuidditchUK to be an official QuidditchUK event? Would small-scale friendlies count, as we've seen before? And mention non-gameplay events, such as what? I guess this is also largely a gameplay question. I'll refer it to Matt at the end to see if he has anything to. To Zoe at the end to see if they have anything to add. Essentially, I think small-scale friendlies are definitely appropriate. I mean, part of the reason that form is there is in order to allow QuidditchUK to add its experience and its and a level of consistency and branding to tournaments to raise the standard of tournament play. But it's also just so QuidditchUK is aware of all the games that are going on in the UK and to allow our events page and our calendar to be a focal point so that someone can just come to and see the entire schedule of Quidditch in the UK for the upcoming weeks, months, etc. So absolutely, I think the smallest gameplay event, I guess even a highly publicized, if a team wants to do a sort of exhibition style open trading session, that's definitely something that we'd want to see on the register an events thing. And likewise, I think small-scale best-of-3 friendlies, even if they're just friendlies, are something that people want to know about. I mean, they're always, the Facebook events that have existed previously have always been something that people have liked and there's been communication and excitement about, so they're definitely something that we want to be able to publicize. Non-gameplay events, I mean, this is a non-gameplay event, these hangouts that are on the website, and I mean, that's mostly just a catch-all thing, because we don't want to be excluding people, excluding events because there's no capacity to endorse them or there's no capacity to apply for them. But really, any sort of, if there's any kind of meetup in a formalized way that QuidditchUK, that would be benefited from QuidditchUK publicizing it as something that will advance the awareness of Quidditch or whatever, that's an appropriate thing to be submitted as an official event. So hopefully that covers everything from my end. I'll just refer to Zoe to see if Zoe has anything to add.
Basically, you've covered it all. The register an event form on the website facilitate you entering pretty much anything. So if your playing event falls under a friendly match or a tournament, then you can enter it under another playing event, and then we can still accommodate it within our system. So you're not going to be limited by the technology. But if you have any questions about that sort of thing, then please email me at technology@quidditchuk.org.
Thanks, Zoe. Another question from the Hangouts now, which I think is from Ash Cooper. It's from a different account, but it's signed off as Ash. And the question is, how do we respond to your answers to these questions? Will these responses be dealt with now in the open office? There's no official way for responding to an answer, but by all means ask another question in the open office, and assuming we've got time, we'll come around to that in turn. We've got about half an hour to an hour left now, so there's definitely time for you to ask another question and for us to answer it if you have any follow-up questions or concerns with an answer that we've previously given. Moving on again, this is another question from OUQC. The question is, how will snitch certification work this season? This, once again, falls under gameplay. And essentially, snitch certification, as it was essentially thrown all over the place when what is now the USQ ceased to be an international body. QuidditchUK is working on snitch development at the moment from a position of not actually touching certifications, not because we don't think certifications are a good idea, but because we don't know what standard, if any, is going to be suggested or recommended or imposed by the IQA. So our snitch development at the moment, as it's being planned, is a strictly kind of training-based undertaking, if you will. Snitch certification, it's likely that the IQA will, within the next few weeks, when the Congress meets for the first time, if not decide or prescribe, then at least give an idea of what and when they'll be doing with regards to snitch certification, because it makes sense that an international standard will exist as it did before and as exists with the IIDP for referees. If that's not the case, and either the IQA don't say anything or say something different to that, then QuidditchUK will, from September, start attempting to develop its own certification system, because we recognise that there needs to be a standard for certifying snitches. The next question from the Hangouts comes from Jan Mikowaszak again. And the question is, please can we have holding music for the quiet moments? I have to admit I'm not sure how serious that question is, but I'm going to refer it to Zoe.
Due to the lag, there are a lot of quiet moments. But that also means getting the music, and there's a whole copyright issue, and it's just a lot of effort. But like, we can take it in turns singing.
Yeah, Jan, I think if you want to fill the quiet moments with your own singing, I believe that would be the most ideal and efficient option. And if you still have any concerns about the musical repertoire of QuidditchUK, I just want to encourage you to make a comment via the website. Thanks.
Okay, we have a question now from Sally Higginson, who is struggling to use any of the established channels, but has managed to get a message through, asking essentially what plans, if any, QuidditchUK has for support or infrastructure to train coaches. And this, once again, falls under gameplay. And the question is, sorry, the answer is essentially that imminently it's unlikely that anything is going to come out about coaching. Obviously, you'll have seen that currently the London Unspeakables are having guest coaching sessions, and there was a lot of discussion of coaching and different coaching styles that went around the various open and closed Team UK training sessions. So we're aware that coaching is sort of a growing issue in the UK at the moment, and it's definitely something we encourage, people sharing and sort of developing coaching styles. And it is something we've discussed in the gameplay department, wanting to have a sort of a coaches discussion area, or the development of coaching resources and so on. The the reality of it is manpower and priorities. We feel that at the moment, developing the infrastructure for the actual competitions and games and the standard of refereeing and snitching is a greater priority than coaching, but it is definitely not something we don't think is important. And once we have got the infrastructure of refereeing and snitching and competitive play to a level that we're comfortable with, it is absolutely the logical next step to start working on supporting coaches. I think that wraps up all the questions from the website and currently in the Hangout. However, we have another update from Ash that he is currently typing a question, efficient as he is, so we'll wait on that at the moment.
If you've been watching for a little while and maybe have been keeping a question to yourself, I just want to encourage you to post that now. This is like your time to get your questions out. This is kind of the last half an hour or so of the Hangout, probably. So if you wanted to have a think about any questions, now is a great time to do that. Thanks.
Okay, we have another question from Emily Autobridge, which is, what do each of you think is the greatest success of Quidditch in the UK since the first match between Kiel and Leicester? And that's sort of, I guess we'll answer that in turn, but since I'm talking, I'll go with that first. I think absolutely the recent development and training of Team UK. I mean, not so much the actual Global Games performance itself, which I think was nothing to be ashamed of, but also not anywhere near the greatest success of UK Quidditch since it was established. However, I think the training sessions from the tryouts to especially to the Team UK Fair and the later training sessions with the 42 and a few other people were massive for communication between teams. I think they've broken down a lot of barriers of not exactly mistrust, but they've opened up the socialization between teams a lot more. They've made teams a lot more comfortable. More members of teams are a lot more comfortable around people that they don't always play with, and they've really raised the standard of a lot of individuals and a lot of teams. So I think definitely, in terms of what's happened in the UK and the impact on the UK game, the greatest success that has happened in UK Quidditch has been the recent Team UK development. I'm going to pass that over to Matt now, I guess, to give his opinion on this question.
I guess I have two great successes. The first one is Derby taking subs to a match, which has been 2 years in the making. That is a great success. More seriously, from a UK perspective, I mean, BQC was amazing. That whole weekend, although it's a bit of a blur for me, was just amazing. And sure, it had its problems, but I think it really kind of kickstarted us to where we are now, and makes me so excited for BQC 2. So I'm going to go with that and pass the mic to Zoe.
I'm going to speak on behalf of Mel as well, and we agree that the recent expansion or explosion of the number of teams in the UK, I think partly thanks to the first BQC, is just really impressive, because we went from having, what, 5 teams to now having over 20. And I think that's probably going to be the thing that we remember as what really pushed Quidditch UK into being the great thing it is and will be in the future.
Okay, thanks guys, and thanks very much, Emily. That's a very thought-provoking question, and hopefully a lot of you listening have different answers, because I think there's a lot of great stuff that's happened in UK Quidditch recently, and if the more people can think of different reasons that it's amazing, the better. So now, probably the most important question we've had so far this evening from Harry Smith. Well, on behalf of all of Derby Union, in fact, which reflects the gravity of the question. Will there be an official Quidditch UK Quadri anytime soon? I don't know what to say. If you didn't get the invite, then I don't know how to tell you this. Sorry. Yeah, it's Tuesday. Guess you're not invited. But on a serious note, no. Ask QuiddCrush. That's probably more their field.
Yeah, I'm sure QuiddCrush will do a open office hours shortly to answer those kind of questions.
Another question now from, I'm guessing this is Ash, although it's Jan's account. Sorry, Jan, if it is actually you. It's complicatedly linked via Google Docs, so I'm going to be a moment. But regarding the decision not to add any QUK history to the website, issues have been raised. The reasons, as they're understood, seem to be there are too many games to add, and there is insufficient or insufficiently accurate data on the results. And Ash, it is Ash. Ash's thoughts on these issues are, firstly, that not all games need to be added. Ash feels that it's appropriate to only add the major tournaments which have shaped Quidditch in the UK, such as the BQC White Knights Highlander and Northern Cup. And he suggests that everyone will be told of the first BQC but have no way of finding the actual information. And he also adds that there is existing data on the scores and results of these major tournaments. People have already collected this information, and refers to the work, for example, of Matty Panda, who has done some work on collating old scores of games in the UK. And Ash also says that adding in this data will not add workload to Quidditch UK, because captains will be expected to add the data in. And asks why we're not taking the opportunity to have our history recorded, given that these few years have shaped Quidditch UK so greatly. I'm going to refer this to Zoe again to see if answer the question more comprehensively. But on a factual note, I would just add that although it's not added in the format that future competitive events will be, the only previous Quidditch UK official event, which is the BQC, does the BQC 2013-14 does have its own page. Sorry, beg pardon. There's a BQC history page which does have details of all the teams playing in the first BQC, and points out the quarterfinalists, semi-finalists, and winners. Zoe.
Yeah, the BQC history page should be pretty comprehensive in that respect, and it is the only official Quidditch UK tournament. I appreciate that there are scores for these matches, but in the future, referees will also be expected to record the squad lists, the numbers of people, things like red cards and yellow cards, which are all details I would like to have for past games, because I'm going to have them in the future games, and this level of inconsistency isn't something that I think we would be comfortable with. I also think it's a bit of a issue that's only been raised by the few teams who played in these events, and given that it's only 7 or 8 teams history, not all of whom have registered for Quidditch UK yet, it's going to be a bit of an issue to put everything in, and also captains can't record results for games. That's the responsibility of the head referee. So we'd also need to know all the referees for that game and whether the referees were qualified. So I think for the sake of consistency, we're not going to have historical events on the website.
Okay, thanks, Zoe. And there's a follow-up question to that, which I'll refer back to Zoe as well now, also from Ash via Jan's account. Will player-specific history and data also be recorded?
Yes. Once you are registered with a team, and then the referee says you were in this match and you played in this match, that match's history will be linked to you and not just to the team. So if you then move teams, you'll still be able to find out all your history from all your past playing teams.
How exciting. Thanks, Zoe. So now taking another question from OUQC, asking can you expand on what sort of tangible connection someone would have to prove in order to be allowed to have a team as their secondary or tertiary team? This is a gameplay question, so I'll answer it. Those of you who've read the roster limitation policy will know that in addition to primary and challenge shield teams, there are certain competitions based on the roster limitation level, as it's called, which will allow people to sometimes play for a secondary or tertiary team, and that to register a team as secondary or tertiary, you need a certain affiliation to that team. The things given as almost always accepted reasons for affiliating with a team as secondary or tertiary are that they were previously your primary team, that they represent or are closest to a university or other place of study that you attend, or they are the nearest team to your permanent place of address. So those are what we imagine secondary and tertiary players mostly having those affiliations for. And they're the reasons that we have a system that incorporates secondary and tertiary players, and we don't just say you must be affiliated with one team. There is an other category. It is possible for anyone to request affiliation, secondary affiliation or tertiary affiliation with any team, and it's all, the gameplay department is always willing to review any kind of requests. If there was another common and likely reason that a team would have a very strong affiliation, that a player would have a very strong affiliation with a team that was not their university team, their closest team to the place they live, or their previous primary team, we would have put it as a category. However, we don't want to rule out sort of corner cases. If, for example, someone's permanent address is in one place, but they regularly commute for whatever reason to another place at weekends, that is just something I've come up with at the top of my head as a potential example for a tangible connection. As it says in the policy, the intention is to prevent people looking at a competition or tournament and thinking, now what team can I play for? But allow players to play for all the teams that they feel a connection with. So it's intentional, there's no definite, these objective criteria must be met. But there'd have to be a pretty convincing, a pretty convincing reason that we wouldn't have thought of for a player to be approved as having that kind of connection if they don't study or live near a team, or that team didn't used to be their primary team. Next question comes from OUQC, and it's back to the issue of history on the website. And OUQC think that historical events not being on the website should be reconsidered, and asks whether it could be updated on the website if there's enough call for it from the community. And I think that is something that is probably best referred to Matt and Zoe equally.
Sure. Well, I'll start. Well, first of all, I'm going to start off by saying that we're always eager to listen to what the community is saying. We really want to avoid the issues that USQ have had in the past and the present, and really just kind of listen to what our community is saying. So in this, as with all things, if there's enough call for it from the community, we will listen. That doesn't mean we will do it, but we will genuinely, seriously consider it as an option. So yeah, that is that. I'm sure Zoe can talk about the technicalities of whether or not the website could be updated, but I just wanted to confirm we're always eager to listen to what people have to say.
So from a tech perspective, it will be easier enough to update or add pages with text covering the history of Quidditch in the UK. It's quite another thing because the way the website has been set up, there's quite a lot of compulsory information that you have to enter for an event to make it complete, and just the way that we've worked the website, it isn't going to be that easy to add them into your team history for it to show up on your team tournament thing on your page anyway. And I don't know what the plans are, but it may end up being, like, certainly for the Challenge Shield on your team page, it will only show the Challenge Shield results for that season. It may be the same for the QuidditchUK season, in which case we'd have to find an alternative way of displaying it on the website anyway.
Okay, thanks, Zoe. So yeah, it sounds like it's from a technological point of view difficult but possible. It definitely seems like there's enough concern that it's something to come back to if there is a big community opinion on it. So moving away from that issue now, a question from Hellfire Mage. With the new restrictions on people who can head referee official QuidditchUK games, do you think it will put assistant referees off from taking the step up to head referees? I think this comes to me again as a gameplay question. So my feeling on it, well, my first thing I'd say is, obviously from a qualification point of view, you do step up from assistant refereeing to head refereeing, but I feel like it's appropriate to point out here that assistant refereeing and head refereeing are different skills, so I guess want to correct the terminology of really stepping up from assistant to head refereeing, because I think there are some fantastic head referees who are appalling assistant referees, myself included. But about being appalling assistant referees, I don't necessarily endorse myself as a fantastic head referee. I'm going to move on now. But essentially, I hope not, because I think having more training resources, both on QUK's end and on the IRTP's end, and having what I think is a really, really good development of really good support system, I guess, for referees in the IRTP. I don't think it will put people off, because I think there'll be more support for head referees. I certainly hope that the necessity of having more head referees to allow competition games, and especially Challenge Shield games, to go ahead will mean that more people will feel like a lot of people who have dabbled in head refereeing in the past, have enjoyed it, have found themselves fairly good at it, will take the leap into actually certifying themselves, because it's now necessary for them to referee games at important or exciting events. And also, of course, what we will have for head referees this year that we did not have previously is payment for refereeing games, because previously it was IQA official referees were paid for IQA events, but because QuidditchUK never hosted any, there was no capacity to pay, well, there was no obligation, and no one ever did pay head referees for officiating games in the UK, whereas now QuidditchUK are saying that for QuidditchUK official games, head referees are required to be paid a fee of £10 per game. So hopefully that will also sort of nudge people who are on the fence of it onto the right side of the fence. That more or less covers that question.
I guess maybe if we round up Ash's question and then call it a night, seeing as there's no more questions lined up.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a burning question in your heart that you wish to ask, please do so in the next 3 minutes while we answer Ash's question. So yeah, please do that now if you require a question answered by our lovely selves.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just take this opportunity as well to remind everyone watching that there is an open office hour specifically directed around the Challenge Shield taking place on, I believe it is Sunday evening. Sorry, I'm just confirming that. I'm relatively sure it's Sunday evening. It is. It's at the same time, 8 o'clock Sunday evening. So if you have any questions or want to know more about the Challenge Shield specifically, make sure you tune into that. And that will be with me and also the Challenge Shield lead coordinator, Emily Otterbridge. But moving back to the final questions on the issue of tournament history on the website, the questions related to the fact that we're asking if it was possible to have an exception for historical games, whereby the website recorded as much information as was available, and exactly what the problems were with taking data on trust, as opposed to the official recording that will be used going forward. These are mainly, again, questions for Zoe, and
I'll happily take it while Zoe is away.
Yeah, in that case, yeah, we'll ask anything specific for Zoe.
Sorry.
Zoe is back. Okay. What, if any, are the technological barriers to having a particular exemption for historical events that just incorporate as much information as we can get? And then, Matt, can you answer what, if any, are the issues with taking information on trust rather than recording it officially?
Okay, so the way we have set up our database system means that there is a lot of linked information, and the information will only be saved and displayed properly if all the information is there, and that currently includes squad lists, the shirt number you played in at the time. It would require everyone on those squads to be a QuidditchUK member currently for it to correctly register in the website. So these are all things that can be worked around, but I personally don't see it as a priority for my department.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment on the kind of noting by trust kind of point. We would love to be able to say that we could just trust everybody to remember every single game they've ever played in, and then input that into our official database, and that'll be fine. But sadly, as we're looking to get more and more legitimate and so on, that's not going to be a realistic option. I think I'm just going to quickly glide onto a follow-up question as well from OQC, if nobody minds. That a few pages would be better than necessarily putting it into the database. I think I'm going to conclude by saying kind of what we spoke about earlier. If there's a significant community call for it, expressed in a legitimate way via email and kind of, done officially rather than on Facebook or in this format, we'd love to consider what we can do to present that history in an appropriate way if people think it's really important. But we have many, many other projects that we would rather get working on that we feel the community would love a lot more. So I'd like to encourage OUQC and Ash and Jan and the people who have been commenting, if you want this to happen, that's great. Get some community support together, send us some emails, and if it looks like it's something that's really wanted, we'll work with you guys and see what we can come up with. So yeah, thanks.
And just to add to that, in terms of pages on the website detailing the history with results and so on, if you are going to send in an email or a comment or an official request to have that changed, which, as Matt said, we definitely welcome you to do if that is something you feel, it would be really helpful if you could take a look at quidditchuk.org/events/BQC history, which currently has a history of the previous BQC, and just outline what you'd like to add to that or change about that to get it to a stage that the community would prefer if it is something that the community feels strongly about. So addressing what will probably be the last question from Ash again, will there be QuidditchUK official match analysis after each match, ideally in a similar style to that of Rob Barringer, referring, I think, to the pre- and post-match reviews surrounding the London Unspeakables and Derby Union game friendlies, which took place recently? And it's definitely a QuidditchUK media question, but in lieu of Alec Greenhalgh, I'm going to refer that question to Matt.
Sure. When we brought Alex on as Quick Media Director, he was really passionate about doing these for every match. And the Rob Barringer coverage of the London versus Derby games was in some ways a pilot for that style of format. Obviously, it's very dependent on volunteers and coverage and travel and expenses and many, many other factors. But it's definitely something we really would like to do. At least in a text format, if not in the video format that Rob put together, which was excellent. So yeah, I'm sure if Alex was here, he would wax lyrical about how passionate he is to get more video coverage of games up and going. So I just want to encourage you guys, that's something we're really working on and are enthusiastic to get going.
Okay, thanks, Matt, and thanks everyone who's still with us for joining us. Thanks to Amy, Matt, Mel, and Zoe for joining me in answering your questions. Hopefully we'll be able to do a similar hangout like this, or do similar hangouts like this in future to answer questions as new projects are announced and or just as time passes and more issues or questions come up. If you have anything to say or contribute in the meantime, there are various options. There are various resources on the QuidditchUK website to do that. QuidditchUK.org/about/contact has a full list of the name, position, and email and QuidditchUK email address of every current QuidditchUK staff member, which you can use to email relevant staff members about their events. If you have a general recommendation for the future or direction of QuidditchUK or a feature you'd like to add, QuidditchUK.org/contact/comment has a comment form which can be used to submit ideas either about QuidditchUK as an organisation or specifically about the website, and they'll be directed to relevant individuals. And also for concerns about teams or concerns that more refer to representation, those of you who have read the member team representation policy, which you can read at QuidditchUK.org/about/constitution, will know that Mel, as Teams Director, will be holding regular meetings with representatives from, or captains forums as they're called, regularly with, sorry, I'm just trying to find the exact regularity. At least every 2 months, Mel will be holding meetings with the captains or a representative in lieu of the captains of all QuidditchUK teams in order to allow you to contribute there. So thanks very much for joining us, and hopefully we'll speak to you again in some format soon enough.
Yep, just wanted to conclude by saying thanks to James for emceeing the evening. Really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us. Go and have a splendid evening of joy.